Major news out of Iraq. The United States has killed Qassem Soleimani.
The situation there heating up very quickly.
The attack was a U.S. airstrike.
As all this is unfolding in Iraq and Iran,
thousands of Iranians took to the streets over the weekend.
Right now, we're just sitting by the river, trying to conserve as much energy as possible. We need to figure out a game plan before we get moving. Feeling pretty demotivated right now to take on the day, but we gotta survive.
Is World War III actually happening, and will there be a draft? The clickbait stops here, because I'm looking out for you. Hello squids and welcome. I hope you're smiling, being productive, and working hard to accomplish your goals. There has been a lot of talk about hashtag World War III and the potential of a draft. Being that I am 22 years old and a guy, and well within the 18 to 25-year-old draft range here in the US, this is something that I am ashamed to say has kept me awake at night. I thought that if I had some questions and concerns about this issue, you, my audience, being in the same age range and demographic as me, probably have some as well. So to better understand what's happening, let's get some background, look into the likelihood of World War III actually happening, the probability of a draft, and what is likely to happen next. Some background. On January 3rd, 2020, US President Donald Trump ordered a targeted airstrike killing top Iranian official Qassem Soleimani, leader of the foreign wing of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He was known for his work behind the scenes, building relationships with known terror groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas, providing training, funding, and weapons for them. Most notably, starting in the early 2000s, he helped create pro-Iranian militias, pushing them to brutally attack US forces. But now we have to deal with the fallout, and the question, is World War III happening? In the days following the attack, the world has seen a number of reactions come out of the Middle East, pretty unanimously angered over the killing. Let's list them. Iran has vowed revenge on the US. Their fellow Middle Eastern country of Iraq's Parliament voted to kick out the 5,000 US troops stationed there. Iran's supreme leader, along with tens of thousands of citizens, mourned Soleimani's death at his funeral, and the death even pissed off people here in the West, with the US Congress requesting President Trump to give a detailed reasoning for the strike. With so many wondering whether or not President Trump made the correct move in taking out Soleimani, some have specifically asked if it was a decision former President Obama would have made. The truth is, we don't know, because as Susan Reese, the former US National Security Advisor serving under the Obama administration, stated in an interview with MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, it was considered, but the opportunity never presented itself.
Well, to my knowledge, Rachel, and certainly while I was National Security Advisor, the Obama administration was not presented with an opportunity by our intelligence community or by the U.S. military to strike Qassem Soleimani. Had we been presented with such an opportunity, what we would have done is weighed very carefully and very deliberately the risks versus the potential rewards.
Reese went on to explain that ordering the strike was most likely the right decision when looking at the safety of US service people abroad and the potential for a terror attacks closer to home.
Judging from what I know and from what we're likely to see, I think that there's real reason to believe that in all likelihood the benefits will be outweighed by the risks.
Current Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also laid out President Trump's decision-making process ahead of ordering the strike on MSNBC's Sunday morning show, Meet the Press, stating it was not just one incident, but a collective risk that inevitably led to the order.
We would have been culpably negligent had we not taken this action. The American people would have said that we weren't doing the right thing to protect and defend American lives. President Trump has been crystal clear.
Is it that imminent? Is the threat, is what the attacks he was putting together so imminent and so big it would have been seen as that kind of negligence?
Made the right decision.
So was the justification in that he's been this destabilizing force in the region for so long, or was the justification this imminent threat?
Chuck, it's never one thing. You've been at this a long time. The American people are smart too. It's never one moment. It's never one instance. It's a collective. It's a full situational awareness of risk.
To summarize, Reese and Pompeo confirmed that while in the short term the move will cause friction, the long-term benefits of the strike will be seen, or in this case, hopefully not seen, because it will mean that we have prevented aggression. The fact is that from a Western or US perspective, the decision to kill Qassem Soleimani with the goal of preventing further harm makes sense. Even going back to President Trump's initial press conference following the strike on Friday, January 3rd, he stressed Soleimani's terror connections and that the US's goal was to prevent a war and not start one.
What the United States did yesterday should have been done long ago. A lot of lives would have been saved. Just recently, Soleimani led the brutal repression of protesters in Iran, where more than 1,000 innocent civilians were tortured and killed by their own government. We took action last night to stop a war. We did not take action to start a war.
As to whether or not there's going to be a draft, I am happy to say that my educated guess would be no. The United States first conscripted soldiers during the Civil War and continued the use of drafts in some form on and off through the Vietnam War, always out of a need for more human bodies or boots on the ground than were freely volunteering. Jennifer Mitz-Salt, a professor of history at Rutgers University who has studied the military, told the New York Times there has been no conscription since 1973 when the draft was abolished after opposition to the fighting in Vietnam, saying, quote, there was huge support for the ending of the draft across the political spectrum. The modern day military is now all voluntary force, with about 1.2 million active duty troops, and to change that, Congress would need to pass a law reinstating the draft in both houses, and the president would have to sign it. Actions that would require broad political support, which as of today is not likely to happen. At this point, you should really not be concerned about a draft at all, and if the situation gets to a point where a draft would be a serious option, there would be much larger or more complex conversations ahead of any decision, so you'd have warning. In truth, a war with Iran will most likely not be fought with a traditional larger-than-life land invasion, requiring millions upon millions of troops, like in wars past, which in a way should scare you more than a draft. In our grandparents' wars, they knew who the enemy was, and they were oceans away. In our parents' wars, the enemy may not have been as well defined, but they were still oceans away. The scary fact is that in our wars, the enemy is going to look just like you, and they'll bring the fight to your home front. And it's scary. Hence the term terror. Iran has tended to follow a certain blueprint, compensating for its inferior military capabilities relative to the United States by waging a wide-ranging proxy warfare that stops short of a direct conflict, allowing it to maintain plausible deniability and is carefully calibrated to advance Iranian interests at a low cost and with minimal political risk to the country. As Arain Tababi, a scholar working with the RAND Corporation who has studied Iran's military doctrine, told The Atlantic, quote, I suspect whatever will happen, and there's no doubt in my mind there will be a response, won't be some knee-jerk action to appease the domestic audience, but will instead reflect a, quote, more strategic, more careful, more planned approach that's going to keep us on our toes for the foreseeable future. When looking at how all this ends and the understandable fear that comes from the hashtag World War III, what scares me the most is something Soleimani said best himself in a 2018 statement to President Trump. Quote, Mr. Trump, the gambler, I'm telling you, know that we are close to you in that place you don't think we are. You will start the war, but we will end it. The next move is Iran's, and my best guess is that we won't see it coming. That said, terror wins by making us feel as though we are alone and by making us live in fear. Know the US and its allies have the most advanced intelligence and military capabilities available. You worrying about it will get us no further, and no, terror only wins by making you fear. I encourage you to keep living life. As usual, laugh, smile, love. And also check in with world affairs, Iran-related and otherwise, once in a while. I think our collective next action was best summarized almost 90 years ago by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he said, quote, so first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to
fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance.
Alright squids, I hope this gave you a little bit of a better understanding of the whole hashtag World War III drama and help you put your fears of being drafted to bed. That said, if you guys still have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section down below and I'll try to get back to you. Share this video with a friend and support the channel by subscribing. Stay you, stay beautiful. I'm Timothy Bach, and until next time, keep that smile side up. Bye-bye.